My name is Captain Ryan Cole. I'm 38 years old, and I've spent the last 16 years serving in the United States Army. Most of those years, I wore my uniform like armor, proud, focused, and sure of who I was. But lately, everything feels like it's slipping. A few months ago, I finalized a divorce I never thought would happen. Now, the home I once returned to after every deployment feels like a stranger's house. My daughter Lily is 7. She's the only thing in this world that still makes sense to me. I see her every other weekend now, and even in those short visits, I feel like I'm losing her a little more each time. The last time I dropped her off, she held onto my hand longer than usual. That's when I realized this next deployment might break more than just distance. The Army is calling me back overseas in 3 weeks. Command says it's a short rotation, routine, nothing to worry about. But try explaining that to a 7-year-old who thinks her dad is some kind of superhero. Try telling her Superman doesn't always get to stay. I've led men into battle, but nothing has prepared me for the ache of driving away from her school after a short goodbye hug. I don't know where this story will end. I only know I'm not the same man I was the last time I deployed. Something's changing, maybe it's me. Maybe it's the weight of being a soldier and a father at the same time. Or maybe it's the silence that lingers when your little girl starts to let go. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sunlight feels a little too soft and quiet. Lily was already in her coat, her small backpack on the floor beside her shoes. She kept glancing up at me while pretending to tie and retie her laces, as if dragging out those last few minutes might change something. I knelt and helped her with the knot she'd undone 3 times. My hands shook a little, not from the cold but from something else I didn't want to name. She looked at me, her eyes wide and serious in a way that didn't match her age. She whispered that she wished I didn't have to go. I told her I'd be back soon. We both knew it was a lie we needed to believe in. When I stood up, she wrapped her arms around my waist and wouldn't let go. I felt the weight of her head against my chest, her breath shallow like she was trying not to cry. I closed my eyes and tried to memorize the moment. The warmth, the shape of her hands gripping my jacket. Then she pulled back just enough to look up at me. Her voice cracked when she asked, "Daddy, does this mean Superman can't live here anymore?" I couldn't answer. The question hit harder than anything I'd faced in uniform. I crouched down again and held her tighter, but she was already slipping away in the way children do when they start to understand disappointment. That night, she went back to her mother's. I watched her walk up the steps, turn back once, then disappear behind the door. The ride back to my apartment felt like driving through a tunnel with no end. No music, no thoughts. Just the image of her face pressed against the window as the car pulled away, her fingers waving slowly, like she was trying to hold on to something she couldn't name. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, hands still on the wheel, wondering if I'd made the right choice by re-enlisting. I told myself I was doing it for her future, for stability, but in that moment, it felt like I was abandoning her for the second time. At home, I found one of her socks under the couch, just one, pink with tiny stars. I held it like it meant something. Maybe it did. Maybe that's all I had left for now. The courtroom smelled like dust and cold paper. I sat in the front row, my uniform pressed, my back straight, trying to hold on to whatever dignity I had left. My ex-wife didn't look at me once. The judge spoke with the kind of calm that doesn't feel human. Words like primary custody and best interest of the child floated above me like smoke. I nodded when I was supposed to, said yes, Your Honor, but none of it felt real. When the gavel came down, it was quiet. No dramatic sound, no final slam. Just the soft scrape of a chair and the closing of a file. I stood, adjusted my collar, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the air hit harder than I expected. I sat on the steps for a long time, elbows on my knees, watching people pass by without seeing them. No one stopped. No one noticed the man in uniform staring at the concrete like it had answers. I'd faced enemy fire. I'd watched friends bleed out in sand and dust. But nothing ever stripped me down like hearing that I couldn't be there for my daughter every day, that I was no longer her safe place. Just a visitor. I don't remember driving home. I just remember silence, a kind so loud it felt like screaming inside my chest. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but the tears never came. All I felt was shame. Not because I lost, but because I hadn't fought harder, because the one thing that mattered most slipped right through me, and I didn't know how to hold on. The motel room smelled like bleach and old smoke, the kind of place you don't stay in unless you've run out of other options. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in uniform, boots unlaced, staring at the stained carpet as if it could explain how I got here. The bathroom light flickered when I turned it on. I leaned over the sink and splashed cold water on my face, hoping it would wake something up in me. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a soldier. I saw a man unraveling. My face looked older than it should. The lines around my eyes, the tired skin, the faint shake in my jaw. I used to stand tall in front of that mirror, chin up, chest out. Now I was searching for anything beneath the surface, anything besides the uniform. I whispered to myself without meaning to. What am I if I'm not her father full-time? What am I when I'm not deployed? Who am I when no one is watching? The room didn't answer. The mirror didn't flinch. There was a picture of Lily in my wallet. I took it out and held it in front of my reflection. Her smile lit up that tiny photo, missing front tooth and all. I couldn't remember the last time I made her laugh like that. I leaned my forehead against the glass. My breath fogged up the image of myself behind it. Maybe that was the truth, blurred, distant, fading. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a ghost wearing medals no one cared about. It started with an old wooden chest tucked in the back of my dad's garage. He passed almost 3 years ago, and I hadn't brought myself to sort through his things until now. The chest was dusty, worn at the corners, with a brass latch that creaked when I opened it. Inside were army patches, faded photographs, and a few yellowing notebooks. I expected to find more of his journals, maybe some medals I'd forgotten. What I didn't expect was a plain white envelope taped to the underside of the lid, with my name written in thick block letters. My hands hesitated, the kind of pause you feel when something is too quiet. I peeled the envelope free and sat on an overturned bucket, staring at it like it might speak first. It was light, almost empty. I opened it and pulled out a short note. It wasn't even on proper paper, just a torn piece from a grocery list pad. In his bold, deliberate handwriting were 6 words. For when the world turns dark, son. Tucked behind the paper was a small silver key. At first, I thought it might be for a drawer, maybe a toolbox. But there was something about the way he'd hidden it that made me think bigger. I turned the key in my fingers, looking for any markings. On the head was a number and 3 letters. I recognized them: bank branch code. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling of that old garage. My father never talked much. He didn't give advice. He gave orders. He wasn't cruel, just distant. Growing up, I sometimes wondered if he loved me or if I was just his mission. Now, sitting there with that note and key, I wasn't so sure. Curiosity got louder than the doubt. I grabbed my phone and looked up the branch. Still open, still real. I told myself I wasn't expecting anything. Maybe it was just a safe deposit box with old paperwork. But something in me knew better. I put the key in my pocket, slid the envelope into my jacket, and closed the chest. As I stepped outside, the late afternoon light cut through the dust, catching the edges of the photo still in my hand. It was one of me and him. I was 9. He had his hand on my shoulder. The only time I remembered him smiling. The key felt heavier with every mile I drove. Like it wasn't just metal, like it carried years, secrets, maybe even a version of my dad I never knew. Part of me didn't want to go through with it. But the other part, the part that still needed answers, knew I had to. The bank lobby was quiet, just the soft tapping of keys and the low hum of distant printers. I handed the small silver key to the teller, unsure of what I was even asking for. She looked at it, typed a few things into her screen, then asked me to wait while she got a manager. I sat in the corner with my hands folded tight, the envelope still in my jacket pocket. 1,000 thoughts ran through me. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe this was someone else's box, or worse, empty. The manager came back holding a folder and motioned me to follow. We went into a small room with a single desk and a computer. She opened the folder, cleared her throat, and told me what she'd found. The account was opened in 1995 under my father's name. Every month since, $25 had been deposited, not one withdrawal, not one pause. That's over 2 decades of silence and saving. I stared at the numbers as she spoke. Total balance as of today, $372,652. I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. I blinked, but the numbers didn't change. My chest tightened and I couldn't say anything at first. All I could think was how long he must have planned this. How quiet the love must have been. This man, who rarely hugged me, who never said the words I wanted, who taught me discipline more than tenderness, had been putting away the only thing he had, month after month, for me. For when the world turned dark, I asked if I could see the deposit records. Each one was handwritten until the late 2000s. After that, automatic transfers, all marked from his personal checking account. That was the part that cracked something open in me. He had done this quietly, with intention, with love I didn't understand until that moment. The drive home was a blur. The road looked the same as always, but everything inside me felt different. The key sat on the passenger seat like it had a weight far beyond its size. I gripped the wheel tighter, trying to process what I had just learned. Memory after memory poured in, uninvited but unstoppable. My father's voice called me to attention. His boots were on the porch at 5 in the morning. The way he never said much, just nodded when things were hard. As a kid, I thought he was cold. As a teenager, I thought he was distant. Now I saw him for what he really was. Steady, quiet, consistent in a way love rarely is. He didn't hug me often, but he always showed up, even when I didn't know I needed him to. He must have started saving right after I turned 9. That was the year he stopped bringing me to the base with him, the year I started asking hard questions. I remember the one time I yelled at him for never telling me he was proud. He didn't raise his voice. He just walked away. Now I wonder if he was building this account the night that happened. If he was putting away money while I was putting up walls. He knew I'd need something one day. Something solid when everything else fell apart. The realization hit me so hard I had to pull over. I sat on the side of the road, engine running, heart pounding. I wanted to call him. I wanted to tell him I understood now. That the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with intention. He'd never been one for speeches. But he gave me everything he could, in the only way he knew how. Action. Sacrifice. Discipline passed down without explanation. The kind of legacy that takes years to recognize. I looked over at the key again. It wasn't just money. It was love disguised as preparation. A father's voice that said, "I'll always take care of you, even if I can't say it out loud." I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and laughed softly. I finally saw him, not just as a soldier, not just as a father, but as a man who loved without needing to be seen. And now, even from the other side of life, he was still watching my 6. I used the money to buy a small house 5 blocks from Lily's school. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet place with a front porch, a room painted yellow for her, and a backyard big enough for a swing set. The day we moved in, I let her pick where every stuffed animal went. I cooked her favorite dinner, even though I nearly burned the chicken. She didn't care. She said it smelled like home. That night, for the first time in months, I read her to sleep under a roof that was ours. I submitted papers to reopen the custody agreement. I didn't know if I had a chance, but I had to try. Not because of pride, because I finally had something real to offer her. Stability, presence, love shown in ways she could feel. When the army called about my next deployment, I told them I wasn't going. I explained, calmly but firmly, that my duty was here now. With Lily, they didn't argue. I think they understood. Every morning now, I walk her to school. She holds my hand the whole way, swinging it with that quiet joy only kids have. Every evening, we cook together, even if it's just boxed mac and cheese. She tells me about her day, and I listen like it's the most important thing in the world. Because it is. Being a soldier taught me structure. Being a father taught me softness. I used to think I had to choose between the two. Now I know the truth. The bravest thing I've ever done wasn't in uniform. It was staying, showing up, choosing love over legacy. If I could talk to you one more time, I wouldn't ask why you never said the words. I wouldn't ask why you were so hard on me, or why love always felt like a lesson I had to earn. I'd just say thank you. Thank you for the planning, for the quiet months that turned into years of sacrifice. For giving me something I didn't even know I would need, for believing I'd one day understand. I do now. I see you clearly, maybe for the first time. You weren't just preparing for my future. You were protecting me from a fall you knew was coming. The money helped, but it wasn't about that. It was the message underneath it. That you were always with me, even when it felt like I was on my own. I'm raising Lily now. I'm trying to show up the way you did. With presence, with consistency, with a kind of love that's built, not spoken. If you were here, I'd tell you I'm proud to be your son. And I hope, wherever you are, you can finally rest knowing I got the message. Loud and clear. If this story touched something in you, I want to hear yours. Maybe someone showed you love quietly. Maybe there was a sacrifice you didn't understand until years later. Share it in the comments. Let this be a space where those silent acts of love are finally seen. We remember that even the quietest gestures can shape an entire life. And if this video meant something to you, go ahead and like it. Subscribe for more stories like this. And most of all, thank the people who loved you in the ways only you could understand.